Hello. This video explains a problem about school lunch reimbursements on the Chapter 3 quiz. I will walk you through the problem and the calculations step by step. Now, before you get too excited thinking that I will provide you with the answers you need to submit, I will not. It will not provide you with the actual numbers you need to submit. Cengage and WebAssign are pretty savvy. When you take the quiz, each of you will have different numbers in your problem. This is a safeguard to keep me honest as well as the students. This word problem has a quite lengthy passage as well as 4 different questions. When you are faced with a lengthy word problem like this one, the first thing you need to do is read the passage or the context information. It's completely okay to not know what you're looking for. This initial read should help you become familiar with the information. The second thing you need to do is to read the first question. Don't try to read all 4 questions. Just take it one step at a time. After you read the first question, go back and read the passage again and try to determine the information you need to answer that first question. Now, here's a tip. Most of the time, when you have a lengthy passage like this one, you will come across information that is not needed to answer the questions. Sometimes it requires you to reread the passage multiple times to ensure that you are selecting the pertinent information. Give yourself some grace if you find yourself needing to reread it multiple times. These problems test your ability to process the information, determine which information is needed to answer the question, and use the math functions from the chapter to answer the question. That's a lot. They are designed for you to exercise your critical thinking skills. So it's normal for you to spend more than just a couple of minutes to solve the problems. After you read the first question, then read the second question. Or after you answer the first question, go back and read the second question and complete that same process again. So answer the questions one at a time, step by step. Okay, let's put this process into practice. According to the Food and Nutrition Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in one school year, the National School Lunch Program served 31.2 million school lunches. Of these, 16.1 million were free lunches, 3.2 million were reduced price lunches, and 11.9 million were full price lunches. The federal government reimburses school districts $2.68 for each free lunch, $2.28 for each reduced price lunch, and 25 cents for each paid lunch. In addition to cash reimbursements, schools are entitled to receive USDA foods called entitlement foods at a value of $19.50 for each lunch served. You are the administrator in charge of the school lunch program for your school district. Last month, the schools, okay, this is important information. This is what we served at our school last month. 28,000 free lunches. So I'm going to write that down on my piece of paper, 28,000. It also tells me $17,000 for reduced price lunches. So I'm going to write down 17 next to my reduced lunches and 53,000 regular price lunches. So I'm going to write down 53,000 for those paid or regular priced lunches. Okay, just like I said, I wrote down free, reduced, paid. This is the information, the amount that the government is going to reimburse our school district. And then next to that, I have listed the amount of lunches that we served that fall within each of those categories last month. Now, in order to find the amounts, we need to multiply those. So we will multiply. Use your calculator, use the calculator on your phone, and we will calculate 2.68 times $28,000 and go across each of those lines. And this is the amount that it will yield for each category. Now that we know the amount of reimbursements for each of those categories, we need to go ahead and add those amounts together because we're trying to find the total amount of reimbursement. When you add those amounts on your calculator, you will find that the answer is $127,050. That was the total amount of reimbursements that we should expect to receive for last month's lunches? That's the answer to the first problem. Now that we have answered the first problem, we can move on to the second problem. B, in addition to the lunch reimbursement, the NSLP program pays your district 35, okay, look, that's not 35 cents, that's 3.5 cents. So it's very important to pay attention to the details. Okay, it pays your district 3.5 cents per 1/2 pint of milk served with each meal. If each student averaged 1/2 pint of milk per meal, calculate the total amount of milk reimbursement in dollars you expect to receive for last month. Okay, so we need two things. We need for this, we need to find out the total amount of lunches served, right? We need to find the total amount of lunches served, and then we need to multiply it times the reimbursement. And here's our reimbursement. Now, in our previous problem, we found out, we listed out how many lunches we served. We served 28,000 free lunches, 17,000 reduced, and 53,000 paid lunches, but we need to find out the total amount of lunches because the government paid us an amount for all lunches. They didn't break it down into different categories. We've got one price. So first, what we need to do is we need to add these amounts together. So when we add the amount of lunches, we find that we served a total of 98,000 lunches last month. Now that we have the total amount, we need to multiply it times this 3.5 cents. So pay attention to those details. When I use my calculator to multiply 98,000 times 0.35 cents, we will find that the amount of reimbursement is $3,430. Okay, so that's the answer for our second question. Now we can move on to the third question. C, the bottom line. What is the total amount of reimbursement in dollars your district will receive for last month? Now, what we need to do is on this particular problem, so to find the total amount of reimbursement, we need to find out what the amount of reimbursement was for the school lunches and for the milk. So we've already calculated these two amounts in our first and second problem. So we know that the amount of lunch reimbursement was $127,050. And then we just calculated that milk reimbursement. So what we need to do is we need to add those two amounts together. Now, one thing I don't think I pointed out in the very beginning, in that one problem where it talks about in the passage, it said, I think it was $19.50 in like reimbursement. So it came in food. So the reason why I omitted that information is because it wasn't in dollars. And if you'll notice in your question, it always says in dollars. It doesn't say in things that are in value of dollars. So food or anything. They just wanted to, the question only wanted to know what the reimbursements were in dollars. So again, that's an example of how they provided us with more information than what we need in order to solve the problem. But we have to use our critical thinking skills and really hone in and determine exactly what's pertinent. Okay, when I add those dollar amounts together, you will find that the answer is $130,480. So that's the total amount of dollar reimbursement that our school received last month, or that our school should receive for the lunches last month. Now that we've answered the third, we get to move to the fourth and the final question. D, red tape. The government paperwork you must submit requires that you report the average reimbursement in dollars per meal for both lunch and milk combined last month. Calculate this amount, round your answer to the nearest cent. Now, to calculate the average reimbursement in dollars per meal for both lunches and milk last month, we need two things. So the two things that we need here, we need to know the total reimbursement, and we need to know the total number of students. Well, we're going to take those amounts and we're going to divide. We'll take the total amount of reimbursement and divide by the total amount of students. And the reason why I know that I'm going to divide, because anytime we need to find an average of something, that's always going to be a division problem. Okay, fortunately, in the previous problems, we've already calculated the total reimbursement and we've already calculated the total students. So here was our total reimbursement. Here's our total students. So we're going to take this number, divide by this number, and that will give us $1.33. So this amount is the average reimbursement per meal for both lunch and milk combined last month. So that's the answer to our final question. Okay, we have some key takeaways from this particular problem. Number one, be prepared to reread the information multiple times. Number two, be aware that most likely there will be some unnecessary information in the word problems. Three, go through the information slowly to help you pay attention to the details like the 3.5 cents or only include reimbursement in actual dollars. Please let me know if you have any further questions about this problem. And as always, if you have any suggestions on how I can better present this information, I am always open to your constructive feedback. Okay, get to it. You've got this.